What happens when your neighbor forbids you from digging a well on your own land? She had no idea that one day she would ask you for toilet water. What happened next put not only her, but the entire neighborhood in its place. They say your home is your castle. Well, mine was more like a busted-down outpost with no moat, no guards, and definitely no peace. But it was mine. Every loose board, every dry weed, every dent in the mailbox. It had my name written on it. Not fancy, not loud. Just a simple, quiet piece of land I bought cash. In a county where you can still smell the dust from the cattle and where porch lights don't blink at night, 'cause folks go to bed early. I came out here for peace, for a second chance, for air that didn't taste like burnt wires and broken dreams. My plan was simple. Fix up the old farmhouse, raise some chickens, maybe plant tomatoes, and live out the rest of my days without begging for anyone's approval. No big plans, just one little freedom at a time. And then, there was her. You ever meet someone who makes your skin itch the moment they speak? Not because of what they say, but the way they say it. Like their voice was dipped in vinegar and polished with superiority? That's Karen. And no, I ain't being cute with the name. Her actual government-issued name is Karen Wilkins. She lives 2 lots down, behind a row of trimmed hedges she calls her fortress of culture. And let me tell you something up front. I had no beef with her. Didn't even know she existed the first 2 weeks I moved in. That changed the minute I decided to do something nice. See, out here, we don't have city water lines running to every property. The old well behind my place was dried up, probably since Clinton was in office. I'm a man who works with his hands, so I figured no problem. I'll dig my own damn well. Took out the permits, followed the codes, even called the utility folks to check for underground lines. Everything above board. And that morning, that beautiful, sunny, no clouds in sight Texas morning, I rolled up my sleeves and grabbed a shovel, figuring I'd start clearing the spot. Nothing fancy, just the early stage. 5 minutes, that's all it took. I hear this voice, sharp, nasal, and soaked in disgust. "Excuse me, just what do you think you're doing?" I turned around. There she stood, blonde helmet of hair, visor sunglasses too big for her face, holding a tiny dog that looked like it hated her as much as it hated me. She had that look. You know, the kind that says, "This entire planet is mine and you're standing in the wrong frame." "Morning, ma'am," I said, polite as ever. "I'm digging a well." She snorted. Actually snorted. "You can't just start digging holes like you're on some survival show. This neighborhood has rules, sir. Rules." I pointed to the copy of the county approval posted on the fence. Real official. Bold letters and all. Got permission right here. It's all good. She didn't even read it. Just squinted at me like I'd kicked her lawn gnome. "I'm the vice president of the Harmony Hills Homeowners Advisory Committee." Oh boy. She said it like she thought I was supposed to salute. "That's so?" I said. "Well, I'm just the guy trying to get clean water." Her lips tightened like she sucked on a lemon. "There hasn't been a well dug in this community in 23 years, and I'll make sure that tradition continues." That night, I came back from picking up some PVC piping, and my work area was trashed. Shovel bent. Spray-painted signs stuck in the dirt. Wells equals property value drop. I stood there, blinking at it. You know that moment when you think, nah, this can't be real. But it was. I took a deep breath and said out loud, "Okay, so that's how this is gonna go." Next morning, I went right back to work. Not because I'm a saint, but because I've been through worse. Divorce. Layoffs. That time my brother borrowed my truck for 4 months. Karen was just noise. Until she wasn't that I found it taped to my screen door, printed on letterhead that screamed, "Fake importance." It claimed I was violating neighborhood aesthetic standards by altering terrain in a visually disruptive manner. Visually disruptive? Lady, I'm surrounded by dirt, dead grass, and a trailer with a busted fridge on its porch. Nobody's bringing better homes and gardens out here anytime soon. I laughed, but it didn't feel funny, because there it was, a threat of fines. Real ones. Hundreds of dollars if I didn't stop. Now mind you, Harmony Hills HOA only governs part of this neighborhood. My property, it's outside their legal zone. That's not me talking. That's the county deed and a real lawyer I paid good money to confirm it. But Karen, she didn't care about law. She cared about control. And to her, me digging that well was like planting a flag in the middle of her imaginary kingdom. I took pictures. I called the sheriff's office. They sent a deputy named Wallace who showed up looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. You legal with that dig? Yes, sir. You got proof? Yes, sir. You got neighbors making trouble? I think you already know that answer. He sighed, said he'd file a report, which I'm pretty sure meant he'd toss it in the back seat and forget about it. He was polite, but indifferent. And that stung more than it should have. You ever feel like the system was built to protect someone else? That's how it felt. Like I was standing out here with my hands up and no one even bothered to look. No joke. My water filter delivery gone. Security cam caught a blurry figure with a distinct ponytail and a dog-shaped silhouette. I showed the footage to the postmaster. Looks like a lady walking a dog. Can't say who. Sorry. Right? Because around here, women walking dogs in yoga pants are apparently untouchable. But I didn't fold. I got a lockbox mailbox. Bought trail cams. I even called the county again, had them confirm in writing that I was well within my rights. And then Karen escalated. That Saturday morning, a group of HOA representatives marched up my driveway like they were hosting a corporate field trip. 5 of them, clipboards in hand, one holding a binder thicker than a preacher's Sunday sermon notes. Karen did the talking. We are here to officially notify you of continued violations against community harmony. I raised an eyebrow. Harmony? Y'all came onto my land with clipboards and zero coffee. That ain't harmony, that's harassment. Her mouth twitched. I could see it, she wasn't used to pushback. We're giving you 48 hours to cease all activity or further actions will be taken. I just stared at them. Further actions, huh? What's next? Y'all gonna summon the ghost of the city planner? One of the men chuckled. Karen did not like that. They left. But it didn't end. Old Samson. 12 years and never so much as sneezed out of rhythm. Suddenly throwing up all over the place. Vet said maybe it was something in the yard, a chemical maybe. I don't point fingers without proof, but let me tell you this, nobody messes with my dog. I stood out in the middle of the yard, hands on my hips, watching the wind blow through the hole I'd fought for. Still unfinished. Still under threat. And I thought, I didn't move out here to start fights. But I damn sure didn't move here to get steamrolled. Karen had no idea who she was messing with. I wasn't gonna beg and I sure wasn't gonna fold. And if she wanted a war over dirt and water, then fine. I'd give her one. What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss how this escalates. You ever reach that point where you stop asking why and start asking what now? That was me, standing in the middle of my own front yard with a shovel in one hand and the HOA violation letter in the other, trying to figure out if I was the only sane person in a neighborhood run by control freaks in designer sweats. It wasn't about the well anymore. It was about something deeper. Pride? Sure. But also something else, principle. You don't just walk up onto someone's land, bark orders, and expect them to roll over, not in my America. Now, I'm no superhero. I'm not some legal scholar or freedom fighter. I'm just a man with a patch of dirt, a busted back, and a deep craving for peace that folks like Karen can't stand to see in someone they didn't approve. But I'll be damned if I let anyone weaponize neighborhood decorum just to stroke their own ego. So that morning early, while the sky was still pink and the birds were arguing about crumbs, I made myself a cup of thick black coffee, strapped on my work gloves, and headed right back out to finish what I started. I wasn't just digging. I was sending a message. About 2 hours in, I heard a car door slam. Not just close slam. The kind of slam that says, I'm mad and I want everybody to know it. I looked up. There she was, marching down the gravel path like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. She had a man with her this time, younger guy, maybe late 30s, dressed like he took his job way too seriously. He introduced himself as a private code compliance consultant. I almost laughed. Ma'am, I said, wiping sweat from my brow. You really hired backup? What's next? A marching band. She ignored me. Mr. Miller, the guy started, flipping open a leather folder like he was about to read me my rights. This property may be in violation of subsection 4A under private drainage regulation. Maybe? I repeated. You're walking onto my land to tell me I might be doing something wrong? He blinked. I smiled. You come back when that folder has something binding in it, I added. Until then, you're just interrupting my morning workout. Karen looked like she'd just bit into a lemon. She tried to speak, but I'd already gone back to work. That dirt wasn't gonna dig itself, and frankly, she wasn't worth the dust on my boots. First it was noise. Real petty stuff. Karen parked her car by the edge of my property line and blasted classical music at full volume, something that sounded like 10 violins fighting in a blender. Not exactly illegal, but definitely annoying. Then she started calling in complaints again, only this time she got more creative. Animal control showed up, said they'd gotten a report that I had an illegal number of poultry. I had 7 hens. 7. Which for the record is below the county limit. They were polite about it, probably because they realized halfway through the visit that Karen was just running her mouth again, but still, it was a disruption. And disruptions were stacking up like bills after Christmas. I hired a small drilling company. Nothing big, just a 2-man team with an old white truck and decades of experience. They showed up, we shook hands, and they got to work. 45 minutes in, a black SUV rolled up. Out steps Karen, and this time she brought someone wearing an actual badge. A city water inspector. Now, I'm no fool. I know when someone's bluffing and when someone's been pressured. That poor inspector looked like he'd been dragged out of bed and force-fed Karen's version of the truth over a dozen phone calls. He asked to see the permits. I showed him. He frowned, nodded, and muttered something like, "You're in the clear, technically." Karen was not pleased. "There's gotta be some code he's violating," she snapped. "Ma'am," the inspector said, clearly at the end of his rope, "he's outside city jurisdiction. You need to stop calling us for things we don't regulate." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to film it. But mostly, I just wanted to see her face when it clicked. She had no power here. None. But that didn't stop her from trying. No, it wasn't a dream. Karen had hired a crew to trim shared foliage between our properties. Thing is, there's no shared anything. The tree line she went after? Fully on my side. I'd even measured it. Twice. I ran out yelling. They stopped. The foreman shrugged and said, "Lady said it was her tree line." "Lady's wrong," I said. "And if one more branch hits the ground, I'll see you all in court." They backed off, apologized, and left. But not before Karen stormed up, red-faced and wild-eyed. "You're poison," she hissed. "You're ruining the character of this neighborhood." "Ma'am," I said calmly, "if character means stalking your neighbors, abusing power, and making up rules as you go, then yeah, I'm happy to ruin it." I walked back inside, heart pounding. Not from fear. From fury. Because all of this was never about the damn well. This was about control. And I wasn't the kind of man who let fear of confrontation keep him small. The calls. The letters. The inspections. The sideways looks from folks I hadn't even spoken to yet. Karen was turning the neighborhood against me, one HOA wine night at a time. People started crossing the street to avoid me. Some stopped waving. Even the guy who borrowed my ladder the first week, Rick from Lot 14, started parking his truck so close to my fence it scraped the edge. I'm a grown man. I don't need to be invited to block parties. But that kind of cold shoulder? It chips at you. And that's when I realized Karen didn't just want me to stop digging. She wanted me gone. I reached out to the county office again and asked for a full, printed boundary confirmation. I called a land surveyor, paid him cash, and had him mark every inch of my property. Then I went to the library. The actual library. Dug into public records on the HOA. Found loopholes. Found expired filings. Found one particular clause that said the HOA's expansion vote into bordering lots had failed in 2007, meaning their claim over my land was nothing but hot air and hope. I documented everything. Compiled it. Printed copies. Laminated the damn pages. And when Karen sent yet another violation notice, hand-delivered this time, I walked right up to her house, knocked on her perfectly symmetrical door, and handed her the binder. "Read it. Or don't. But either way, you're done." She slammed the door. It was beautiful. A real, working well. Clean water. Strong pressure. No HOA hands on the valve. I stood over it that evening with my dog at my feet and a beer in my hand, watching the sun drop like a gold coin behind the trees. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. But it was short-lived. Because what happened next? It flipped the whole game. This is the climax. Everything you've waited for, it's right here. Stick around to see how I turned the tables once and for all. You ever notice how some people can't stand to see others succeed unless they had a hand in it? Like, if they didn't build the ladder, they'd rather watch you fall than climb. That was Karen. A woman so obsessed with control. She'd rather burn the whole neighborhood down than let someone live a life she didn't approve of. But here's the thing about bullies and pearls. They're real loud when they think you're alone. They get real quiet when you shine a light on them. And baby, I was about to light up the whole block. It wasn't just a victory. It was a statement. I even painted the pump handle red, white, and blue, just to remind Karen what country she was living in. That first morning, I ran the water line to my outdoor spigot, tested the pressure, and let the hose fly for a minute. It hit the dirt so hard it made a rainbow in the sunlight. My dog, Samson, rolled in the mud like it was his birthday. And me? I just stood there with my arms crossed, sipping my coffee, watching that beautiful stream of independence shoot out like a promise. But of course, peace doesn't last when you've got someone next door who treats personal freedom like a personal attack. Started small. My mailbox got knocked off the post. Not smashed, unscrewed. Like someone wanted to make a point without making a sound. Then came the anonymous tip to the health department. Apparently, someone claimed I was polluting ground soil with unregulated chemicals. You know what the chemicals were? So, I'd rinsed my hands off in the yard with a bar of regular hand soap. Nothing fancy. Nothing industrial. Nothing that required a hazmat team. The inspector, a polite man named Henderson, looked almost embarrassed. "Mr. Miller," he said, checking the report. "Honestly, I don't even know why I'm here. You're here because my neighbor has more time than sense," I told him. He chuckled. "That ain't in the report, but I believe it. I came home one afternoon from the feed store and noticed something strange. My well pump wasn't running. No hum, no vibration, just silence. I checked the breaker. Fine. The line? Intact. But the pump? Dead. It was brand new, installed professionally. And I knew something was wrong. I called the crew who'd installed it. They came out next morning. Within 10 minutes, they found the issue. "Sir," the technician said carefully, "this unit was intentionally tampered with. Someone shorted the control box." "What does that mean?" "It means someone reached in and fried the board from the inside. You'd need tools and knowledge. This wasn't an accident. Let that sit for a second. Someone had climbed onto my property, again, opened a sealed system and sabotaged the one thing I worked weeks to build. That wasn't petty. That wasn't HOA games. That was straight-up destruction of private property." I looked around my yard. I'd installed cameras, sure, but the last one had gone offline 2 days earlier. Coincidence? Maybe. But in this neighborhood, I didn't believe in coincidences anymore. I stopped talking to the neighbors. I stopped responding to Karen's messages. I stopped answering HOA letters. Instead, I built. I called an old friend from my army days, Marcus, a retired systems engineer with a habit of overdoing everything. Told him I needed help making sure no one touched my land again without being seen. 3 days later, my property had more eyes than a Vegas casino. Thermal, motion, solar-powered, all legal, all mine. Marcus even set up a remote cloud drive that backed up every second of footage, just in case someone tried to pull a mysterious outage again. I patched the well system myself, not because I didn't trust folks, but because I wanted my hands on every inch of it. If someone came back, they'd find a system rigged with alarms louder than a church bell and lights that would light up Karen's begonias like a UFO landing. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. Saturday morning. Bright. Too quiet. I was making repairs to the pump housing when I heard coughing from behind the fence. A dry, hacking, aggressive cough. I looked up and saw Karen, red-faced, sweat-soaked, and pacing her yard like a woman whose life had gone sideways. She saw me, and to my surprise, she walked up to the fence. No clipboard, no sunglasses, no entourage, just her, looking miserable. "Do you have a hose I could borrow?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. I blinked. "What happened to your water?" "Main broke. Entire streets cut off." I said nothing. I just looked at her. "Please," she added. "I have guests coming this afternoon." I could have said a lot. Could have handed her a printout of every violation, every call, every complaint. Could have laughed. Could have said nope. Instead, I walked over to my outdoor spigot, turned the handle and watched clean, cold water pour out. "You want water?" I asked. "Go grab a bucket." She did. 5 minutes later, I watched Karen Wilkins, Queen of the HOA, standing in my yard, filling a plastic watering can from my well pump, while her little designer dog tried to bark at my chickens. And me, I smiled. Because 2 days later I got a letter in the mail. From Karen. Handwritten. It wasn't long. It wasn't an apology, not really. But it said this. I may have been wrong about how I handled things. Thank you for the water. That's it. Just enough humanity to be shocking. I kept the letter. Still have it. Not because it fixed anything, but because it proved something. Even the most stubborn people crack when the truth hits them in the mouth. You've seen the confrontation. But wait till you see the consequences. The final part of the story doesn't just bring closure, it brings justice. Don't miss what happens next. You ever sit still long enough to watch someone dig their own hole with words, pride, and a refusal to read the room? That's what the last few weeks with Karen felt like. Every move she made, every violation she sent, every sideways look at my fence, she wasn't burying me. She was burying herself. I never set out to be the neighborhood rebel. I came here for peace. But let me tell you something about peace, it's a funny little thing. Everyone says they want it right up until you stop asking for permission to keep it. Now, the well was working. The sabotage was behind me. And Karen, well, she'd tasted a little of my water, both literally and metaphorically. But in her world, a moment of humility didn't mean surrender. No, it meant she was planning her next move, and I could feel it coming like a thunderstorm on a still day. But this time, I didn't just brace for it. I prepared. It started, of all places, with a knock. Early morning. Sunday. I was halfway through fixing the hinges on the chicken coop when I heard it. 3 polite taps on my front door. Now understand, I don't get visitors. Not friendly ones anyway. Folks in this neighborhood don't drop by unless there's an agenda stapled to their soul. I opened the door and there she was. Karen. Hair disheveled, wearing sunglasses too big for her face, holding a stainless steel tumbler like it was a holy relic. And she was polite? Not friendly. Not warm. But polite. Can I talk to you for a minute? Now, I'm not a cruel man. But I've lived long enough to know that every favor has a follow-up. Still, I stepped outside, arms folded, and gave her the floor, not about the well. Not about the HOA. Not even about me. She talked about her husband who left last year. About her daughter who hadn't spoken to her in 6 months. About how she built her life around this image of being in control, of keeping things right. And how everything felt wrong now, even her. I listened. Not because I owed her anything, but because I could tell she hadn't had someone just listen in a long time. And finally she said, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just tired of being angry. I stood there stunned. Not because she'd cracked, but because I didn't feel like gloating. I felt human. For the first time in months, there was no war in my yard. Just 2 people, sun on their backs, past their breaking points. That same afternoon, a city utility truck pulled into the neighborhood. A real one. Official seal. 2 workers hopped out, clipboard in hand, and started walking up to properties. I watched from the porch, squinting. Something didn't feel right. Turns out there was a new ordinance being proposed at the county level. Something about mandatory infrastructure consolidation. If passed, it would mean all homes within a certain radius would be required to connect to municipal water, even those with working wells. I wasn't having that. Karen got the same notice. We both stared at it, side by side, reading the fine print like it was a math exam from hell. And then, for the first time ever, she said, This is wrong. I nodded. Welcome to the party. The next week, there was a community meeting at the local rec center. One of those events where everyone wears khakis, drinks lukewarm coffee, and pretends the pastries aren't stale. I showed up. Not because I like crowds, I don't. But because when something threatens your home, you show up no matter how uncomfortable it is. I expected resistance. What I didn't expect was Karen standing up and speaking on my behalf. We've had our differences, she said. But Mr. Miller followed the law. He respected the land. And whether you like him or not, he has the right to live how he chooses, just like the rest of us. Folks looked like someone had unplugged their microphones. Silence. Eyebrows. A few murmurs. Me? I just sat there. Still. Shocked. And deeply aware that the world had just tilted, even if only a little. Not that day. Not after that speech. Not after folks saw the woman who once barked HOA rules like commandments, now advocating for a man she once tried to push out. Change doesn't come easy. Not in small towns. Not in HOA neighborhoods where everybody's afraid to blink first. But that day, something changed. Not for the whole country. Not even the whole town. But on my street, it shifted. A week later, Karen showed up again. this time with something unexpected in her hand, a bottle of bleach. Our water's still off, she said, gesturing toward her house. Temporary emergency system. It's bad. I raised an eyebrow. You're not about to ask me for another bucket of water, are you? She smiled. Thin, tired, but real. No, not this time. I just came to ask if I could use your bathroom. I nearly dropped my wrench. Now look, most folks would have said no. Would have laughed. Closed the door. And honestly, part of me wanted to. But instead, I stepped aside. It's clean. Don't flush too hard. Handle sticks. She walked past, careful not to touch anything. Like the whole room was made of glass. 5 minutes later, she came back out, hands folded. Thank you, she said. You didn't have to. I shrugged. I know. But I figured if you're drinking from my well, might as well get the full experience. She chuckled. A real one. And walked away. Karen still lives down the block. Still keeps her hedges trimmed like they're national monuments. Still walks that tiny dog like it's royalty. But she doesn't send letters anymore. Doesn't file complaints. And every now and then, not often, she waves. And me? I got my well. I got my land. I got my peace back. But more importantly, I got a reminder that standing your ground isn't about being loud. It's about being unshakable, even when no one else believes you should be. And sometimes, when folks try to cut off your water, you hand them a bucket and let the truth hit 'em like a hose to the face.